Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. We're going to challenge everything you think you know about history's most catastrophic events. When a massive storm, an earthquake, or a flood hits, our minds immediately go to the raw, uncontrollable power of nature, right? Well, today, we're looking at the data and the history to rethink that exact phrase, natural disaster. Take a look at this quote. Historian Christopher Courtney completely flips the script on our understanding here. He points out that, sure, nature might provide the hazard, the shaking ground, the torrential rain, but it's actually human factors that create the disaster. It's an incredibly powerful shift in perspective. It means the true scale of a tragedy is usually dictated not by the earth, but by us. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the myth of natural disasters, then cover tremors and ash, rising waters, and lethal winds, before finally asking ourselves, who is really to blame? Let's get into it.
Section 1. The myth of natural disasters. How society multiplies the threat.
Moving right along to Section 2, Tremors and Ash, when the earth opens and mountains erupt.
Let's go back to January 1556. China's Shaanxi province gets hit by an earthquake estimated between a 7.3 and 7.9 magnitude. Now, scientifically speaking, that is a big quake, but it's nowhere near the strongest ever recorded. So why was it so deadly? Well, it comes down to a lethal combination, a highly dense population living in incredibly vulnerable cave dwellings. The second the shaking started, those homes instantly collapsed.
And that collapse led to this staggering number, 830,000. That's the estimated death toll, making it the deadliest earthquake in known history. But here's the crucial takeaway. Not all of those people died in the initial collapse. A massive, tragic portion of this toll was driven by the entirely preventable famine and disease that tore through the surviving population in the unmanaged aftermath. We actually have records from a survivor named Kin Keta, who pulled a fascinating human lesson right out of the rubble. He observed that rigid stone buildings simply snapped and buried people alive. His big takeaway was that adapting our infrastructure, using softer, more flexible materials like wood, would be far more earthquake-resistant. It's a perfect early example of humanity realizing that our building choices literally dictate our survival. Next up, we're traveling to Indonesia in April 1815 for the eruption of Mount Tambora. Author Gillen Darcy Wood highlights this specific event for its unparalleled catastrophic lethality. But once again, that immediate blast, that is only a fraction of the story here. An estimated 100,000 people died. And while yes, many were killed instantly by crashing volcanic debris, a horrifying secondary impact quickly took hold. The eruption poisoned the local wells. It utterly destroyed the crops. Mass starvation and disease followed closely behind, proving that a lack of clean water and food infrastructure turns an isolated hazard into a prolonged nightmare. This brilliantly illustrates the horrific domino effect of Mount Tambora. This localized hazard pumped so much toxic debris into the atmosphere that it literally triggered a massive global climate drop. Temperatures plummeted worldwide, leading to the infamous year without a summer in 1816, which caused crop failures and disease all the way across Europe and North America. Mind-blowing, right? All right, Section 3, Rising Waters, Infrastructure, Instability, and the Deluge. Let's look at the 1931 Yangtze River flood in China. Heavy rains absolutely played a part, but the underlying crisis here was extreme political instability and conflict. Because of that chaos, maintaining essential infrastructure like dikes and granaries just fell entirely by the wayside. Combine that with disastrously poor government relief efforts, and a natural hazard morphed into a spectacular catastrophe that created 52 million refugees. And that brings us to this devastating toll, an estimated 2 million people. Just try to wrap your head around that scale. Records indicate about 140,000 people actually drowned or were crushed by debris. That means the vast majority, well over 1.5 million human beings, perished from entirely preventable, human-driven failures of famine and disease after the floodwaters peaked. If you want undeniable proof that infrastructure saves lives, just fast forward to 1998. The Chinese government had finally built much stronger embankments along the Yangtze, a flood hit that was physically larger and more powerful than the one in 1931. Yet, because of that infrastructure, the death toll was an estimated 4,150. Look, still a tragedy for sure, but a tiny fraction of the 2 million lives lost previously. Moving into more recent history, on December 26, 2004,
a massive 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra. The tremor itself was incredibly powerful, no doubt, but it was the resulting Indian Ocean tsunami that would cement this day in history as the deadliest tsunami on record.
Those waves struck 14 different countries across Asia and Africa, resulting in nearly 228,000 people dead or missing. While the sheer scale of this event was triggered entirely by nature without early warning networks in place, managing the immense, sprawling aftermath required an unprecedented, coordinated global human response just to prevent further catastrophic loss of life from disease.
That brings us to Section 4, Lethal Winds, the cost of being unprepared. Real quick, before we look at the deadliest storm, here's a geographical clarification that often confuses people. Whether you call it a hurricane, a typhoon, or a cyclone, guess what? They are literally the exact same weather phenomenon. The only difference is the ocean basin where they form. So the deadliest of these swirling storms was the Bhola Cyclone, which struck northeastern India and former East Pakistan in November of 1970. The lethality here was absolutely terrifying, claiming an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 lives. But the raging winds and storm surge only tell half the story.
What's truly astonishing is the human fallout. The Pakistani government's incredibly slow and inadequate disaster response enraged the surviving population. It fueled existing political tensions to such a boiling point that it led directly to East Pakistan declaring itself the independent nation of Bangladesh the very next year. It is a stark reminder of how disaster response can literally redraw the map of the world. Similarly, the deadliest tornado in recorded history hit central Bangladesh in April 1989. The 1,300 deaths weren't just a product of high wind speeds. The tragedy was amplified by a dense population living completely without early warning systems and residing in buildings and shelters that simply could not withstand that level of damage.
And finally, Section 5. Who is really to blame? Rethinking acts of nature. When we connect all our findings today, it perfectly proves our central thesis. A fault rupture, heavy rain, high winds. Okay, yes, those are natural triggers. But in every single historical event we covered, that trigger was heavily weaponized by severe human culpability. Brittle stone buildings, neglected dikes, a total lack of warning systems. Nature knocks on the door, but humanity builds the house.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. As we face an evolving and changing climate, with storms and hazards becoming more unpredictable, have we truly learned the lessons of 1556, or 1815, or 1931? Or, in our rapidly growing cities, are we still building the perfect conditions for tomorrow's deadly natural disasters? Next time you walk outside, take a hard look at the infrastructure around you. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what you see.